Hey guys, it's Kai with Kai Dragon Gardening and Cooking. Today we're going to talk about peppers, pepper care, and kind of the myths about peppers. Something that a lot of people don't understand, or they think there's something you got to do with peppers that's a little different, or that you have to prune them. So first of all, these are some of my really good Big Bertha pepper plants. As you can see, we've got two beautiful growing peppers, and we got more growing in here. The thing about peppers is they are a hot climate plant that grows and thrives well in warm climates. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to want to keep them in full sun at all times, depending on the heat intensity of your area. So for example, a lot of plants say full sun. The misconception is that's from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. they get full sun. If you're in a climate that gets hot very quickly and the UV gets strong, you will burn plants. So that's something that you have to keep in mind with pepper plants. And pepper plants originated in Central South America, so they also, much like tomatoes, grew in the forests. We cultivated them and we can grow them in pots and all sorts of stuff. But full sun doesn't mean scorch them to death. I just wanted to clarify that because a lot of times there's this big misconception with that. And in warm climates, as long as you harvest them accurately, they will keep producing, and these can grow indefinitely. One of the cool things about pepper plants is if you're in a warm climate or you move them indoors during the winter, transplant them back outside during the spring, they will live endlessly. I've had a pepper plant that lived over 3 years and still produced every year, up until the point that it was just not very feasible to keep in the house. It was probably 5 foot tall and it was hard to light. Now with a better light setup, we could probably do that, but the container we had in itself weighed easily 100 pounds because it was just massive to sustain the roots. The root system was really, really thick. And a lot of the old plant stems became almost like branches, so it almost became like a tree, which is pretty cool. Pepper plants also do not need pruning. There's this massive misconception that all plants need pruned. These do not. In fact, it's better just to leave the plant alone. The only time I would recommend pruning is when the plant gets a certain height. You can cut some of the bottom leaves here. And I would just say, 6 inches, maybe around here. Get rid of these. And that's just to help reduce risk of diseases with water not striking the plants and keeping it off the ground. Other than that, these are really hardy plants. They do like acidic soil. And then so average you want to do 6.5. You can go a little lower, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would start these off as a balanced pH when you're first putting them in the ground. So at 10-10-10, NPK would be good, and then later in the season, once it's more established, you can switch to a fertilizer that produces more blossoms. Same rule applies though. This will slow down as more peppers get on here. So probably next week we'll cut those. That way this will focus on growth again and getting more flowers. And at some point you'll just have to keep managing that because there's only so many peppers a plant will produce at one time. The other thing that I would recommend with pepper care is companion planting, which we'll have a different video on that. But onions, basil, oregano make great companion plants for peppers. For example, I have a lot of basil that we planted right here, and over here I planted a lot of onions. They can coexist with each other, and the reason I recommend that is there's a lot of critters out there that don't like the smell of basil or onions, especially squirrels, rabbits, critters that will eat these leaves off this plant. It's not like a tomato plant where, of course, it's still part of the nightshade family. These ones, animals will eat. Tomatoes, they'll ignore because somehow they know that one's more poisonous. Don't ask me why or how. They just know. These ones, on the other hand, I've seen a pepper plant sheared completely off. In fact, we do have one. In this video, I will show you. Whereas, since we put basil and onions here, we've had no critters that have hopped the fence or figured out a way in here to eat it. Well, in this bed, we just put peppers in here last week. We haven't had a companion plant, and as you can see here with these pepper plants, they were unfortunately attacked by some type of rodent. More than likely, it was a rabbit or field mice, or it could have been some type of other critter. But this is why we have the importance of getting companion plants, especially herbs, onions, basil, oregano, things like that that are acceptable with it, to help repel those type of animals because of the strong smell that they produce. But they're also great if you need to get more herbs for your garden. The other thing you can do is get some like non-chemical liquid fence that they use to repel deer and rabbits and put that around your entire perimeter. The only downside with that is if it rains, you're going to have to reapply it quite frequently. These are great examples of ones that you'd want to prune off. This shows signs of distress, and this here shows signs that there could be a disease or something that we have to research. So what we want to do is cut these. Actually, they're just falling off right now. They just come off. So we'll have to make sure, keep an eye on this one. Same goes for this plant over here. As you can see, there's some leaves here that we need to look at, figure out what's going on with that one. You can carefully just pinch it off, but this is type of stuff that I would cut off your pepper plants just to make sure your disease or whatever is going on does not spread. And then finally, another great example of why companion planting is important with peppers of all things is we did have a squirrel that came up in here, dug this up, and then take a good bite out of this pepper plant. This one will probably make it because it's got one leaf, but it's going to be really hard for recovery, which means we'll probably have to replace it. So pepper plants are very adaptable. They survive really well. However, it's vital that you pay attention to the signs, looking for yellowing, diseases, anything attacking it. And do your research on companion planting. In fact, we'll have a video kind of talking more about that, because you don't have to just plant herbs with it. You can plant carrots, and you can plant things like, I believe, beets. That one I have to confirm, but I believe so.
Radishes.
Radishes.
But not daikon radishes.
So you can plant stuff with them and then still put some herbs on the outer side just to create a fake wall to try to keep critters out. So there's a lot of things you can do with it.
Marigolds are also good.
Except they don't carry a pungent scent like basil and onions do that is hard on the noses of like squirrels and rabbits, which drives them away. That's also why you don't see the dogs, for example, when they go near those beds, they don't jump in it. They don't like the smell of it either. So that's some quick tips on peppers. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gardening information, tips, tricks, and our journey through the summer. Thanks.